please support the artist that provided us the illustrations to go along with the vision of my theory. What you're about to watch is part 2 of my theory about Luffy's awakening. Part 1 is linked in the description, and I'll also put the link for part 3 when that is released. In last week's video, I talked about how I believe Luffy will enter a new form in which he is powered up by ghosts entering his body, which led to me speculating that this could then inspire him to learn how to infuse the spiritual energy around him into his body. Basically, Gear 3rd, Luffy breathes air into his bones. In Gear 4th, he blows air into his muscles. And with Gear 5th, he blows air into his soul. Makes complete and perfect sense, right? Maybe not in the physical sense, but when trying to explain spiritual concepts, the more I simplify, the more confusing it'll be. However, you're in luck because I love to pretend I'm studying alongside Dr. Vegapunk. Let's start with looking at the way Devil Fruit Awakening is used by Katakuri and Doflamingo. It appears as if they somehow can infuse Devil Fruit power into their surroundings. I'm proposing that Luffy will not only learn how to project his power outwards into his surroundings, but also pull energy inwards. I believe that this ability born from Devil Fruit Awakening, in addition to his mastery over Haki, will birth Gear 5th. Now, with that being said, what new form will Luffy take on while in Gear 5th? Will it just be Boundman 2.0? No way. Before I talk about one potential name, we gotta consider the possibility of multiple forms and why that would be the case. First off, if Gear 4th has multiple forms, wouldn't it be expected for Gear 5th to have multiple forms as well? That goes without saying, but also consider this. Nature comes in many forms. There are all kinds of habitats. The weather changes and so does the seasons. The environment is considered to be the outer elements. On the contrary, I believe there are inner elements that correlate to each color of Haki. I could dive more into how I believe Gear 5th will be a byproduct of Luffy's inner nature becoming in tune with his outer nature. But this intro has gone on long enough. I keep mentioning that Luffy needs mastery of Haki for Gear 5th. Devil Fruit Awakening is the part where Luffy gets in touch with the outer nature, but I don't think that's where Gear 5th ends. I believe Luffy needs to have a balance within himself before utilizing the power of the outer nature that he pulled into his body. Haki Mastery is the part where Luffy gets in touch with his inner nature. I'll elaborate more during the intro of part 3 of this theory, but I'm going to hang up my lab coat for now. Let's move on to the fun speculation of what Gear 5th could look like and actually do. If Luffy were to enter Gear 5th based on the energy around him, then it shouldn't come as a surprise that it will also mean the form he takes on adapts to his environment. In fact, I said this in a previous video. Now that Luffy is in Wano, he seems to be in the perfect place to master the advanced form of armament. I'm going to go over this in Understanding Haki Part 4, about how the environment can also affect the development of Haki. Have you ever noticed that in Wano, a lot of the animals around have flame patterns? I'll just leave it at that for now, but please stay tuned and check out Understanding Haki Part 4. I speculate that Kinemon has mastered the 3rd form of armament, hence why he can use fire abilities. Also, Hyogoro has flame patterns in his design. I'm not sure if he can currently use the 3rd form of armament Haki, given how much his will was broken in Udon. However, despite the possible lack in his willpower, he may still have experience of his own to share with Luffy. Or maybe Luffy just learned it on his own. Luffy has developed most of his techniques by himself. He's great at learning things solo. Flame clouds are something Luffy would at least need to witness in order to learn from it. And that's no problem, considering he witnessed Momonosuke use it all the way back in Punk Hazard. Not only that, he fought Kaido. Luffy has learned from his foes before. When Luffy developed Gear 2nd, he learned how to use Soru not long after his fight with CP9. In that video, I came to the conclusion that Luffy will debut a new form called Gear 4th Sunman. Since then, I have considered that Luffy's new form may surpass the limits of man. So I present to you the new name I have come up with. Gear 5th MoonGod. So the name isn't all that different, but it makes even more sense. Also, quick pat on my back, cause I theorized Sunman before Nika was introduced into the story. I have gone over a sun-based Luffy before, and because of that, I don't want to be redundant. I described in great detail how I think Sunman would work, so I won't repeat myself here. Just watch my theory on Sunman to get the most out of how I believe SunGod would work. However, I didn't reference Devil Fruit Awakening in that video. The rubber power Luffy awakens is what I believe would elevate him from man to God. My speculation for Luffy activating Gear Force Sunman was as simple as him using Muscle Balloon in the third form of Armored Haki, which I believe to be coating one's body in fire. However, Gear 5th would be different. Instead of Muscle Bloom, it would be the gathering of the breath of his environment. But this isn't literal air, but rather a spiritual energy known as Chi. Once the Chi is in his body, it will have both spiritual and physical ramifications. It'll first affect him physically by causing the air and liquid to heat up within specific parts of his body. It would apply the properties of hot air balloon to Luffy's limbs and head. More specifically, Luffy's arms, legs, and hair would grow so disproportionately big that it would be a hindrance in battle. Now, I could imagine Luffy's expanding hair taking the form of an afro. And would you look at that marking on Afro Luffy's chest? At this point, Luffy would have been successful letting the spirit of the outer nature within his body, but now will need to match his inner nature to the foreign power. By doing so, he would be able to claim the chi from the outside as his own and convert it into haki, which will then take on the form of a third level of armored haki, aka fire. You might be wondering, if the air and liquid in his body start to heat up and he catches on fire, could that potentially be harmful to Luffy? Well, no. Just look at this explanation from Oda as to why Diablo Jamba doesn't hurt Sanji. It has to do with the heat of his heart, and I don't think Oda's just joking here. He might actually be serious. Which is precisely why I put such an emphasis on Luffy's inner nature. If his heart can match the heat of fire, or even greater than that, then he will be safe and sound being a god of fire. After he has found equilibrium within his body, his arms, legs, and head will shrink down to normal proportions and envelop in flames. His hair is going from an afro to something resembling a flame on top of his head. However, I could totally see Oda's playful and goofy self keeping the afro all throughout the form. And you know what? That would actually make some sense given that the sun is a ball after all. You heard it here first. Sun God Nika has an afro. Alright, enough talking about how he'll look, and let's start talking about what he can actually do. One way I could see fire enhancing Luffy's rubber powers would be for him to heat up to the point at which his rubber body will become even more malleable and as a result allow him to better shapeshift. I could see him doing something such as turning his fist into a mace. He might even mold his entire body. In my original Sunman theory, I gave reasons as to why it would make sense for Luffy's fire form to be based on either a dragon, monkey, or lion. Gear 4th already has 3 forms, so perhaps those 3 forms having the element of fire added to them would make them models for Gear 5th Sun God. For example, Luffy taking on the appearance of Snake Man, but with fire hair and arms could be called Sun God Model Dragon. Bound Man with fire could be Sun God Model Lion. Chances are, Tank Man's fighting style wouldn't be appropriate for Sun God, but if there were to be a model for Tank Man, I wouldn't know what to call it. By process of elimination, it would be Model Monkey, but I think Sun God's base form would be Model Monkey. If you have an idea for Tank Man, tell me in the comment section what model it could be. However, after I explain how I think Sun God will fight, you'll see why I doubt Tank Man would have a Sun God form. As I said, I think Sun God's base form would have Model Infernate. Oops, I actually mean to say Model Monkey. The most appropriate weapon to use in this form is the one that Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, uses. With Devil Fruit Awakening, he could probably create his own power pole. Remember how Katakuri could spawn fists out of donuts? Luffy might be able to do something similar with flame clouds, thus he could forge fists, weapons, or fists shaped like weapons. Most importantly, what makes Gear 5th a big upgrade from Gear 4th is that it uses an external energy in conjunction with Luffy's own power. A huge oversight in my Sunman theory is that I didn't factor in Luffy's stamina. If Luffy were to use all of that advanced haki in his Gear 4th, it would make the time limit even shorter in exchange for power. I can actually imagine Luffy attempting this against Kaido, giving it his all with just his haki alone. In the process, he might defeat his own self before Kaido even has to. Him being drained of his own spiritual energy is what can make Luffy the perfect host for other spirits to enter his vessel. Oh boy, I really want to see Nightmare Luffy again. Anyway, regardless of what level of arm and haki Luffy uses, he seems to have a time and energy limit. However, in Gear 5th, he could be surrounded by energy to fuel his stamina. In fact, the power of a sun god would be too much for the human body, even if it were to be a rubber one. Thus, he would constantly need to burn up the energy he receives. This form would definitely be one that focuses on speed and assault. Let's not limit Gear 5th to just a sun god. If Luffy were to have more than one form of Gear 5th, then perhaps we will see him become a MoonGod as well. Please support the artist that provided us the illustrations to go along with the vision of my theory. This is probably the video I've been most excited to release in a good while. Thanks for watching my food for thought. Check out the rest of my channel for more videos like this. I have a series in particular which I go all out, and I highly recommend you check it out. You have finished the main portion of the video, however, if you check the time bar, you may see more of the videos left in what I call the secret ending. I hope you catch my next video. Till then, see you next time. I talked a good amount about how I think the environment affects haki in this theory, and if you've been following my Red Sea theory, then you'd know that I've been speculating the same idea there as well. This isn't just a coincidence, there will be a crossover of ideas and conclusions. Most of my theories are connected in many ways. If I had Gear 5th, it would be called Spider God, because of the way my ideas are contained in a web. If you have not watched my Red Sea theory, then there will be a link in the description, and here's some clips to give you a demo. In the world of One Piece, you don't just have a blue sea, but also a white sea in the sky. That place is clearly associated with heaven. Perhaps there is a red sea associated with hell. It only makes sense if heaven is up in the sky, then hell would be underground. In today's video, I'm going to talk about a wide array of topics that are all linked together. First, I'll explain the Red Sea, aka Hell. Next, I'll explain how I believe the Red Sea creates the White Sea. Then we'll go over the races of Kaido, Oars, and King. After that, we'll go deeper into what makes Lunarians so special. I'll show the possible connection between the Red Sea and the Red Line. We'll even go over how Wano fits into all of this. Lastly, we'll talk about how hell may be relevant in the future of this story. Not all magma makes up the Red Sea. Rather, it requires pyrobloin mixed with the magma to create the Red Sea. In fact, pyrobloin comes from the Red Sea to begin with. The word pyro is of Greek origin and refers to fire and heat. Better yet, the White Sea wouldn't exist if pyrobloin wasn't sent up into the atmosphere by volcanic eruptions. Pyro water is what we would call the liquid that makes up the Red Sea. To figure out what pyrobloin contributes to the Red Sea, we must figure out what it would take for an island surrounded by magma to be inhabitable. Well, obviously the denizens of the Red Sea would be super tough to live in that environment. In fact, there may even be creatures that live inside the Red Sea. Imagine how terrifyingly strong a Red Sea King could be. Perhaps as strong as a dragon. Hint hint. Speaking of which, the animals that live on land in the Red Sea would be those you would consider to be monsters. Down in the Red Sea, dinosaurs, aka dragons, may have never gone extinct. With all that being said, would there be any intelligent life form on the islands of the Red Sea? Well, let's look back at the White Sea to figure this one out. The citizens of heaven noticeably resemble angels due to their wings. You know, we've never been given an explanation as to why characters like Moria or Kaido look the way that they do. Perhaps there are a race of people that resemble demons that come from a place where the sea is red. Also, the Earth's mantle is extremely huge considering that it is the largest layer of the Earth. The height of the mantle is 3,000 kilometers, which would make someone like Oars look like a pebble. The Mount Fuji of Wano must lead straight into the Red Sea. The volcanic eruptions is probably considered an upstream for the demons down in hell. Just like how the people of Earth make their way up to Skypiea. This would explain why Majins like Or and Onis like Kaido have such a deep connection and fascination with Wano. Even the Lunarians have a connection due to Luna referring to the moon. 4 out of the 5 main families of Wano also refer to the moon. Could it be that those from the Red Sea bestowed their knowledge upon Wano citizens? It may have been the Lunarians. My buddy Sean the MoonGod pointed out to me that Tenguyama does happen to have wings similar to King. Lunarians may have learned how to turn their wings black, and then with that knowledge taught the samurais how to turn their blades black. In fact, Shishui has been noted to be heavier than the average sword. We have seen that as King's flames go away, so does his durability, showing a connection between his fire ability and armament hardening. Due to losing his durability, he also gets faster, aka lighter. That just might be evidence to show that the same method for making blades heavier and black originates from the method Lunarians use to make their own bodies tougher. If you think about when the Red Scavengers ambushed Kaido and pierced him, he was also having flashbacks to memories that traumatized him. I believe the demons of the Red Sea not only evolved to have tougher skin, but unconsciously became spiritually in tune with their surroundings, which means just like the islands they live on that can withstand the heat of the magma, they too develop exteriors as tough as iron. However, that only covers their exterior protection. Their insides have to be protected as well. Unlike the demons, they didn't become cold on the inside. Instead, they became one with the fiery hell. I'm sure whatever led them to having to flee into the Red Sea filled their hearts with anger and hatred. With that being said, how is it that they obtained fire powers? Well, if you've been following my channel, you know that I believe fire is the third form of armament. Now you might be wondering, if the demons were superior at using armament, how is it that the Lunarians would be able to surpass their level of armament haki? If the demons are using armament haki inherently 24/7, surely they would be better and be using the fire level of armament haki already. Well, the answer to that is yes and no.